We bleed orange and black.
Welcome to We Bleed Orange and Black, the podcast for Halloween and horror lovers. I'm Jeff C. Carter.
And I'm Ryan Gerasi.
This month, we're shining our spook light on Edward M. Erdelac, our co-host from the Six Demon Bag and a writer of Jewish Weird Westerns, Funky Mystic Detectives, Lovecraft, Spycraft, and Star Wars. Welcome back, Ed.
Thank you. Thanks for talking to me about this and giving me a little room to talk about my stuff. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. What I'd love to talk to you about is your latest book. I want you to tell us a bit about Zora. Can you give us a brief summary of Zora Neale Hurston and who she was?
Zora Neale Hurston was an African-American writer in the 30s, around the time of the Harlem Renaissance. She wrote Their Eyes Were Watching God in 1937. It was her most famous novel. She also did Moses Man on the Mountain, Jonah's Gourdvine. But what a lot of people don't know her for or know about her is that she was also an anthropologist and kind of a groundbreaking anthropologist for the 30s, in that she was this African-American woman who traveled alone throughout the rural South in a fiver with a 44 strapped to her waist, and basically went through all the turpentine camps and the lumber mills and just gathered rural African-American cultural stories and folklore and songs and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, did it all by herself, which was kind of unprecedented for the time. And during the time of the Harlem Renaissance, like a lot of the literati and stuff, and the Langston Hughes and Alain Locke and all the guys that were kind of the proponents of that movement, Richard Wright, were kind of looking to elevate the culture, the African-American culture, to kind of take its place among what they considered, more hoity-toity and like civilized Western kind of cultures. And so they were kind of eschewing the rural African-American stories, like folk stories and patois and anything that like reminded them of, slavery and everything, basically, or anything that didn't subscribe to this like Western view of high culture, of like classical music and then literature that was meant to elevate, and it flirted a lot with communism and stuff like that. And Zora was more into just kind of talking to the normal, like everyday people. Her argument was kind of like, we have this culture of our own that we should be not elevating so much as like sharing with the world and stuff. Like, we have this thing already that is awesome enough that we don't need to take our place amongst like white people and stuff, basically.
She was an anthropologist.
She was one of the first, I think she was the first African-American female graduate of Barnard College. She got a Guggenheim Fellowship to travel to Haiti and observe voodoo rituals, Vodun. She called it voodoo, so like I'm going to use voodoo. She was the first to photograph a living victim of the zombie phenomenon and everything in Haiti and stuff. And she recorded all these dances and folk songs and rituals and stuff. She also went to New Orleans and studied under Doc Luke Turner, this two-headed hoodoo doctor. Hoodoo's kind of like the American offshoot of West African mysticism that was combined with like Native American and German and European like influences and stuff, and created this whole kind of a medicine movement, like hedge magic, I guess you would call it, or something, or just like a magical tradition that was native to America, and kind of like a proponent of African American
Melting pot?
Yeah, it was like a melting pot of magical
gumbo?
tradition. Yeah, gumbo of magical tradition that was kind of established by African Americans. And she underwent this whole like initiation ritual. She spent like 7 days naked on a sofa with like a rattlesnake skin, like a snake skin spread across her, and like candles burning and fasting and all this stuff to enter into this like magical tradition and everything. And the thing about her was she took these like whereas like her peers kind of looked down, turned their nose up on that stuff and looked down on it and everything, she went into everything like wide-eyed and like treated everything seriously and with respect. And so she was allowed into all these like things that people didn't see back then, people that a very insular cultures and stuff. And she was able to write about them. She published in Mules and Men all her stuff about the travels through the South, and Tell My Horse. She published all her Haitian and Jamaican travels and stuff. Yeah, so she was just a fascinating lady, honestly.
So I was going to say, you're talking about how she was more interested in a grassroots movement in terms of literature and culture and sharing the realities on the ground, as opposed to the sort of ivory tower approach to culture and literature. And I was going to guess, okay, well, she's an anthropologist. She studies people. So naturally she has more of a grounded view. But it sounds like even anthropology back then was a little more clinical and removed and sort of had an outside perspective of the populations they studied. So it sounds like she really was special in the way that she got down on people's level and sort of embedded with the culture she was interested in.
Her first trip out or something, she found people very kind of standoffish and not wanting to talk to her and everything. So then she would start to affect a local accent or something, or study the people around her and just kind of carry herself more that way so they would accept her and everything. And she started telling people she was like a bootlegger and stuff, so that they would be more willing to talk to her and everything. So she kind of would disappear into these cultures and everything, as opposed to kind of remaining aloof and studying things clinically, like you said, and everything. She had this really unique perspective too, because she was born in Alabama, but she grew up in this town called Eatonville, Florida, that was entirely African-American. And her father was not only the pastor of the local church or whatever, he also became the mayor and stuff. And so she kind of grew up in this culture of Black agency, that a lot of African Americans didn't have, all around the country and stuff. So she was taken aback by racism when she encountered it and stuff, in the way that it baffled her, you know what I mean? Because she wasn't a downtrodden person and everything. She was very proud and very
educated.
Yeah, and she just she came at the world very bold and expected everybody to accept her. And sometimes her views didn't quite gel with her peers or the world at large and stuff. She was not a proponent of school integration, because she said forcing African Americans into white schools is going to dilute African American education. We already have these schools that teach us our own histories and our own curriculum and everything. And sure enough, to some extent, she was a little bit right in that she went into, as Black kids were bused into white schools, they faced all this opposition, but they also had their own, they learned a less directed history,
A more Eurocentric.
Yeah, more Eurocentric history, yeah. Exactly. And
so what year was this?
She lived from 1891 to 1960. She was mainly active in the 30s and 40s and stuff, mid to late 30s and 40s.
So when you think about the 30s and 40s and what a culture shock it must have been to go from her town, which was a sort of little bubble of Black excellence, out into mainstream America.
Yeah, she has this great quote that I can't entirely say, but somebody called her a racial epithet, the famous one, the N one. And the first time she heard that, somebody called her, "You're just N." And her response was, "I don't know what made me angrier, that she called me that, or that she said just."
What was your first introduction to Zora?
I took a creative writing class in college, and our teacher assigned Their Eyes Were Watching God. I really fell for the language and everything, because it's all entirely in this kind of colloquial speech and everything. And when I was a little kid, and this is going to sound a little bad at first, but let me get to it. So when I was a little kid, one of my favorite things to hear read to me by my mother, and she hated reading it, was Uncle Remus's stories and everything, of Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox and all that kind of stuff. And these were African American folk tales that were translated through a white lens or something. I don't remember the guy who recorded them and everything, but then Disney got a hold of them, and what I had were these Disney storybooks of Uncle Remus and everything. I don't know how I had these, they're very not in fashion now and everything. All these Song of the South storybooks and everything. But I love that language. I love the musicality of it and the color to it and everything. And she Their Eyes Were Watching God kind of brought me back to that a little bit. We would go around, this is probably not very PC and everything, but it was our teacher would have us, pass the book around and read passages of it. And I loved how easy it was to fall into the cadence and the rhythm of the rural speech and everything that she recorded. And Richard Wright, who wrote, Native Son, took her to task for this book a lot and said, shucking and jiving, and we're like, it's like a minstrel show and everything. And her argument was like, well, it's not. I mean, this is how these people speak and everything, and we shouldn't be ashamed of ourselves and all this. So yeah, that was where I first encountered her. And then like later on, way later, I was writing some kind of voodoo horror story or something, and I was using Wade Davis's book, Serpent in the Rainbow. Yeah, as like a research tool and everything. And they mentioned one of her books, and I realized it was the same writer, you know, and everything. And I didn't realize that she had been an anthropologist. It mentioned Tell My Horse and everything. It cited it a couple times and stuff. So I just kind of went and looked it up, and I really fell in love with her through the ethnobiology work and everything, because it was just I don't know, the stories were so cool, and her true stories were better than the stuff she made up, even, you know what I mean? The whole hoodoo initiation and the zombies, and it's just really cool, interesting stuff. And the funny stories she would get from like people in like roadside juke joints and all this, and it's just, they're like travel logs of a time that doesn't exist anymore and stuff. And to think that this woman was bold enough to go on her own in the 30s and like record all this stuff on her own.
So you're a horror writer and you write weird westerns, but I would say most of all you're a history buff. You don't write a lot of alternate history. You like to write secret history, where all the facts in the history books stand, and you write about the little secret gaps in between, sort of stuff going on under the surface. So you must have gravitated to this real world, pulpy occult detective who has just ready-made, voodoo travelogues ready to go.
Yeah, she has all the makings of a occult detective, like right from the get-go and everything. And then she also she lied a lot. She like told all these like crazy like lies and everything, depending on how to get in with other people. And like also if she was courting some guy she liked and she needed to be a younger woman, she would just lie about her birthday and everything, and people these guys believed her and stuff, which was some kind of testament to her ability to lie and everything. But she left all these like gaps in her history and stuff, and so yeah, there were plenty of places for me to play in. Yeah, I love like jumping into those little blank spots, and Zora has a ton of blank spots. It's just so wide and varied, all the places she went, besides Haiti and Jamaica and all these weird little corners of the South Sea, Georgia islands and stuff. She went to Honduras once and like tried to find a lost city of the monkey god that Charles Lindbergh had flown over or something. I mean, like her real history has so many cool little things to jump on and everything that it was very little. It was a playground to like jump into her life and kind of run around and fill in the little gaps with weird stuff,
She's lucky she didn't contract leishmaniasis, which all the explorers who went after the city of the monkey god contracted. It's this hideous, wasting, flesh-eating disease that it does to...
Yeah, I read about
European
that in an article.
Explorers. Yeah, yes. I read the book the article's based on. The book is this journalist, and he's writing an article about the lost city of the monkey god down in South America, and it slowly turns from a history to a travelogue into a horror story where he's documenting all these explorers that just get obsessed with finding the city and die horribly. And by the halfway point of the book, he's down there and he's obsessed. And you're like, no, stop, don't. And then he contracts, and everyone on his team contract this horrific disease that sort of is doing to European explorers what European explorers did to Latin to South and North America hundreds of years prior. And like any good story, he's the narrator, so you assume that he lives in the end, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, detailing this expedition or this turn of events, or the Honduran government wanted this or that. And then he just sneaks into a little parenthesis, by the way, the disease is back. So like as he's writing this disease that he'd been through all these harsh, extreme medical trials through to try to eradicate, it's back and it's consuming him as he's finishing the book. And it's so nightmarish.
It sounds like a Lovecraft story, like where they go, you find that unbelievable in Lovecraft stories where he writes to the very end that he's going to die and all this stuff.
Exactly, where he's like, it's coming through the window. Yeah, exactly.
So then,
speaking of Lovecraft, you're a Lovecraftian writer. you decide to draft Zora into your Lovecraftian mythos.
Yeah, that was mainly because Oscar Rios of Golden Goblin Press put out a call for, he wanted to do a book, an anthology of stories kind of as a counterpoint to Horror at Red Hook, which is like Lovecraft's notoriously most racist story or whatever. And he wanted to entitle it like Heroes of Red Hook and kind of have Lovecraftian stories from from a minority point of view or something. I thought about Zora because I found that I ran into this quote by her where she says, "Research is formalized curiosity. It is poking and prying with a purpose. It's a seeking that he who wishes may know the cosmic secrets of the world and they that dwell therein." So it's kind of like Lovecraft has that famous quote about like there's things you're not supposed to know. You know, do you remember that quote?
The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far.
So I like to say that Lovecraft is the guy who recognizes these terrible truths or whatever about the universe and kind of shrinks from it. And Zora is the one who looks at it and doesn't blink. You know what I mean? She embraces like that. She wants to know more and everything. And she's not blasted by it like a typical Lovecraftian hero is kind of has his mind destroyed at the end. I think she's more of a Lovecraftian protagonist in the Robert E. Howard vein, where they just like, well, it's there, and this is the truth, and let's fight it, pretty much, and see what we can do and everything.
Your typical Lovecraftian protagonist is very much living in a bubble of a Western Eurocentric mindset, and anyone who goes native is destroyed. Like the very act of going native or finding out something about your bloodline that's not, pure white is sort of the insidious corruption that shows you that there's no point to anything and it's all meaningless in the cosmic sense. Whereas it sounds like Zora, who loved to get down on other people's levels and go through their rites and initiations, literally faced these outer concepts and their entities head on, eyes open.
Yeah, I took the whole initiation ceremony under the snakeskin and everything, and kind of ran with that and proposed this. And she also did this book Moses, Man on the Mountain, about Moses and kind of reimagining him as a conjure man and stuff. And there was a lot of snake imagery in that and everything about snakes guarding like this hoodoo book of knowledge and everything that Moses used to then later part the Red Sea and all this kind of stuff. So I kind of ran with that whole concept that she was maybe inducted into some kind of secret cult of Yig that was like, there's some school of thought that Yig is more kind to mankind than, or at least more, even that mankind might have sprung due to Yig's experiments or something, or due to Yigian experimentation or something, like mankind might have come upon the earth due to Yig. So I kind of I proposed that maybe there was this that Yigians throughout history and stuff have kind of worked in a Promethean kind of way towards mankind and everything. And then so Moses, there's that whole thing about where Moses puts a staff with a stick with a brass serpent on it or something to drive back something in the Bible. I don't remember what it is now. I'm drawing a blank on it. But so I took all this serpentine imagery and stuff, and that's in history and that's in Zora's work and everything, and kind of made that the thing that winds through her life, that every once in a while, she does all these amazing things, and then every once in a while in these gaps in her history, she's called upon, to foil some outer god plot by Yig, himself or something. Yig is her patron and all this. So at one point she in one of the stories, she actually gets the serpent ring of Set and everything from the Conan stories and all this. And that's like a Yigian artifact. And she, decides not to keep it and all this. And so it's kind of like she has this destiny that maybe she shunts a little bit by being a writer and just kind of living her life and all this kind of stuff. And then later on, she in real life, she passed away in a kind of forgotten in a county home in Florida. And I had it kind of proposed that she's on her deathbed, she's kind of reliving her life in this fragmented way in her failing mind and everything, and regrets not taking this ring and trying to do more good, using its power to like do all this good and everything. And then at the end of her life, some representative of Yig comes to her and actually bestows upon her what in one of the in the Curse of Yig, I think you turn into a snake or something, right? That's the Curse of Yig or whatever. But in terms of Zora, I kind of made that a blessing, to where she takes this form of this snake that hatches from her body and when it dies, and she spends her actual life dreaming in the dreamlands and stuff, and creating like kingdoms and all kinds of things. And I don't know, that's where I was going with the whole Yigian thing and everything. And a cool thing that kind of supported my weird little theory and everything, that she had done all these weird things that she couldn't talk about and stuff. Her manuscripts and everything when she died were, an old student of hers just happened to be passing by and saw somebody throwing all her manuscripts and notes and everything into a trash fire, into like a barrel, and rescued what he could of them and everything. And then so like I kind of proposed that she had written of things that were not supposed to be shared and all this. Most of it was destroyed and all this, and what survived was these like could be considered these stories and everything that are in this collection.
Speaking of Lovecraft and the Mythos, you were recently at NecronomiCon, right?
Yeah, I got to I was invited by Paula Ashe, the writer, to be on this panel about Zora and everything at NecronomiCon, which like I never would have gone unless she had invited me and everything, because there's I don't know, I'm a little I'm a little iffy and about I'm making a lot of assumptions being a white writer to like write not only about this queen of the Harlem Renaissance, but also in her from her perspective, in her voice and all this. And so if Paula hadn't really liked this book and invited me on this thing, I never would have gone and stuff, but I did. And then she didn't end up going. So I actually wound up moderating the panel and stuff.
I haven't talked to you about that experience at all.
It went pretty cool. Like I said Nicole Kurtz was on there, and she's another great African-American writer, and I kind of let her, I deferred to her a lot and stuff, let her do a lot of talking and everything. And I think I held my own and stuff. I hope I did Zora proud. I think it was the ultimate. I just think like Zora would love the idea of. She was never even aware of Lovecraft, I'm sure, but like with all the talk about Lovecraft's racism, and yet he has this enduring legacy and everything. Like it's got to be. It has to tickle her wherever she is. That like. She had this panel about her writing and stuff on a thing that's meant to honor his writings and everything and stuff. I just thought that was pretty cool.
What was the impetus for a Zora panel at NecronomiCon? Is it in the zeitgeist? Are there other projects out now? Who were these other people?
I'm not entirely sure. I might have been the one to even suggest it. Like when I signed up for NecronomiCon a long time ago, like just think, well, maybe I'll try to go to NecronomiCon. And it says, as an author, like propose some panels or something if you want. And I proposed one on Zora because, hey, I got a book, about Zora and Lovecraft and all this. And I did another one on I don't even remember what my others were proposed were, but like, yeah, I don't remember if it was Nicole or if it was the other guy I was with, whose name is escaping me. But they asked me, were you the one that proposed this panel and everything? And I was like, yeah, it could be that I did actually, but then forgot about it. And then and then Paula got put on it and invited me to be on it. And I was like, by that time I was going through a lot of stuff in my life, and I was like, I'm not gonna be able to make it to Necronomicon. So I just completely wrote it off. But then when she invited me, I was like, yeah, I want to go. I'm going to make it happen like somehow. And I called in some favors with my family and stuff, and made it happen.
So back to the writing. What's the title of the book?
RAINBRINGER, Zora Neale Hurston Against the Lovecraftian Mythos, which I guess is a big mouthful, but I wanted to make sure people knew exactly what it was about.
Were you interested in pitching this at all to publishers? Did you think it was too niche?
I made a conscious choice not to pitch it to anybody because not only because I thought nobody would want to do it, but I thought it was I just thought it was a great idea, honestly, personally, like if I'm being humble. But I was like, there could be question again about me being a white writer writing from this African-American woman's perspective. And I didn't want it said that I was taking anybody else's spot. I didn't want that even implied or anything. It's a black story. And if, there are black writers that are willing to tell it. And right now, John Jennings is doing a comic on Zora as an occult detective, not with Lovecraft, but from a hoodoo perspective and stuff. And so those are the people that should be telling this story. I just tell these stories because they come to me, and I love Zora like she's a crush or something. I always loved her, and I couldn't not do this book, but I didn't want to step on anybody's toes or have that implied or anything. I wanted to put it out in a pure way. without any of that kind of baggage and stuff. And if people want to read it, they can read it. And if they don't, they don't. That's cool. And it's crazy to me that a lot of the reviews I've gotten from white readers, they had no idea that she was a real person.
She's such a larger than life character. It's hard to believe that one woman did all this when she did.
I guess, but that's why I put an introduction in there, like kind of like saying that she was a real person and everything. And I said a lot of people came to me unaware that she even existed and stuff. And I feel like if I do nothing else with this book, if I've told people about this amazing woman that they wouldn't have read about otherwise, then I feel like I did something,
I had never heard of her. And then I did go down a rabbit hole of biography reading and stuff. So
yeah, I got that a lot. A lot of people like picked up her books that I recommended in the introduction and all this stuff. So I'm happy for that. I don't know who I'm telling this for. I mean, I tell all my stories for myself. So I mean, like I just do it because it tickled me to do this. But yeah, if I in some small way I bring Zora back to people that wouldn't otherwise normally have read about her, then I feel like I did something. I accomplished something. So that's cool.
So you did make this book yourself. Do you want to go into a bit about what you chose for the cover art and how that came together? Because it's got this really, really awesome illustration on the cover.
That was I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for that and everything, and then I saw a lot of art by way back. I did a story for Sursova. I think I'm saying that right. Sursova magazine. It was a Arthurian Lovecraftian story, and there was the cover artist was Jabari Weathers, and they selected my story for the cover, and he did this awesome picture of this knight like with a sword and everything, and this woman, this kind of mer woman, and it was just beautiful. It was like fine art, and so I followed Jabari for a lot of time. I connected with them on Facebook and stuff, and they've done a lot of art for Magic the Gathering. I think they've worked on Dungeons and Dragons now too, so like I caught them right at the cusp of like being completely unable to ever afford them ever again and stuff.
I don't even play Magic the Gathering, but I feel like that is the stamp of authenticity. If a painter is done work for Magic the Gathering, it's going to be elite, insane, top tier stuff.
Yeah. And so I gave them a couple of different concepts to work with, like maybe her sitting in front of her car. There's this awesome picture of her sitting on the running board of her car. There's another one with her hip kind of cocked and the gun on her hip and this big wide-brimmed hat. I had originally pictured her like an overhead shot of her kind of with her arms up and the rain kind of falling on her and stuff. And then I mentioned that there was going to be a snake motif and all this kind of stuff. And then Jabari did all my concepts and then did this one that was like, they obviously put more work into it than the other ones, and stuff.
One they really wanted to do?
Yeah, the one they wanted to do, the one with the snake and the rain coming down and her kind of like tilting her hat and everything. And I was like, Jabari, I really like that. These are really good, but that one you did there is like awesome and stuff. And they were like, yeah, I was kind of hoping you would pick that one and stuff and everything. So they definitely put more work into that one.
Is there any hoodoo or voodoo symbology in that picture?
I was kind of planning that the snake was not only was kind of like Damballa Wado or something. The snake in voodoo is kind of like this deity that like is controlling the gates. Right? Yeah, the Loa in charge of the gate between this world and the next. So she has this albino snake on her shoulder and everything in the picture. And then I had the ring of Set on her one finger. That's why she's only wearing one glove. And one thing that doesn't often show, like you got to really look for it, but it's there. In one of the stories, Zora is she's working for the WPA in New York City, and she was in real life, she worked as like a script supervisor or something with the WPA's Federal Theater program in New York City. And at the time, Orson Welles was doing this all African American production of Macbeth. It was called Voodoo Macbeth in the press because he changed the setting to like Haiti and stuff. So I had her on that, and in that story, and it's called King Yeller, this critic who's kind of anti-New Deal and everything slips a copy of The King in Yellow to Orson Welles to get him kind of obsessed with it and kind of not only bring about the coming of Hastur and the King in Yellow and all this, but to just wreck this, this endeavor to kind of uplift African Americans and kind of push the socialist Rooseveltian, program and everything. And Zora, it kind of falls to Zora to like stop it. On the cover, I had Jabari put this. There's a city skyline in the background that you can kind of see when you look through the raindrops. But there's also the stars of the Hyades cluster are like behind her, like over her head and stuff in there. So that was kind of like a little nod to like Chambers and the King in Yellow and all that stuff that Jabari put in there. I thought was pretty cool. It's extremely subtle. Probably nobody notices it, but
It's the kind of cover you can tell there's incredible depth and there is secret meaning to it.
yeah, it looks like a tarot card or something.
Yeah.
It's pretty
It's
cool. Yeah.
really amazing. You not only solicited this cover, you also did an audiobook, right?
Yes. I went through ACX. ACX is like this, it's like a service through Amazon where you can create your own audiobooks. You can put up your samples of text and solicit narrators that come on there and stuff. And you can do a profit share, which is what I did, or you can like, straight up hire people and stuff. And I got this amazing narrator, Musukula Masakoi, who like just really captured Zora's voice so well. Like, she gave me chills in my ear when I heard her like audition and everything. She says this very cool, sensual voice. She could do the like Gullah patois that's in there and stuff, and the various accents and everything. And yeah, she really knocked it out of the park. She did an awesome job, I think.
So do you think you'd cast her as Zora if they ever made a Zora movie?
I don't know if she acts and stuff. I mean, she's a beautiful woman. She's on Facebook, but that'd probably be up to her. I don't know if that's in her purview or not. Definitely in an animated version.
Is there anyone else you'd like to cast in a Zora movie?
Yeah, maybe she's on Atlanta. Zazie Beetz. Yeah. She's pretty cool, and she has that air, like confident air and everything that's like really cool.
Yeah, and she can do action because she was in Deadpool.
Yeah, she was Domino. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I could definitely see her as a Zora type. Anything else you want to tell us about Zora?
Yeah, like I said, stretch yourself and go pick up her books. Like if you like this book, go find the original, because this stuff pales compared to her real life and everything. It's cool to like put a little dressing, a little occult dressing on somebody that you admire and kind of like bring them to a wider audience. But go find the real stuff because it's way cooler.
We've gone over all the classic Halloween questions with Ed in our previous Spooktaculars, but there was something I did want to ask. How would you describe trick-or-treating as different between when you were a kid in Indiana and when you took your own kids?
I feel like when I was a kid, trick-or-treating was like a tireless endeavor. Like we were never ready to go home, you know what I mean? And my kids just hit the wall at like 8:30 or 9 o'clock or something, and they're ready to go we have a tradition of getting pizza every time, and they're like, let's go for pizza. We were never going home. I felt like my buddy David and I, when we go trick-or-treating, it was like we had to be dragged home,
Same. And I don't know if it's because I didn't have access to like candy year round, but like the thought of not trick-or-treating until I dropped is obscene to me.
I was never a big candy person either. Like I wasn't a big candy kid. I'm still not a big candy person, but just going out in a mask was
the thrill of the hunt.
Yeah, the thrill of the hunt. Just like I don't know. It was like marking the side of an airplane how much candy you got, with the stamp, whatever.
The measure of how many times you went out into the dark and braved the unknown. So my follow-up question that is, you've got a bunch of kids with a range of ages, so you've been trick-or-treating for a while now. Is there any difference between when you took like your first kid trick-or-treating to nowadays?
Not that much, honestly. My 18-year-old is still going. She's still like getting costumes and stuff, and still trying to like rope her brother and sister into like a group costume, So like no, it's become, and you can go back to the old podcast where I always said Christmas was my favorite and everything, and I feel like this year I can say Halloween has surpassed it. It's my favorite now. Because
hey, we finally got him.
Yeah, we worked on them for years.
Honestly, I realized how much Christmas was about just the kids, like being with the kids and stuff, and seeing them open stuff and everything. And that Christmas I spent one Christmas day without my kids, and I was like, I don't care about this at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not the same without a bunch of. It's about the giving and all that stuff. And if you don't have that, then bring on Halloween, because I can do that by myself, or I can do that with my kids.
All right, kids, you've heard it here. Ed bleeds orange and black.
Yeah, I'm a convert. I converted.
Are you guys watching anything right now? Do you have any recommendations? My wife and I just jumped ship on She-Hulk. I remember really liking the comic book. I like the character. I like the fourth wall breaking. She-Hulk was out there breaking the fourth wall before Deadpool was a glimmer in Rob Liefeld's eye. I had really high hopes. I was a fan of Orphan Black. I was into it, and it's just not very interesting or funny. Like very little happens in 30 minutes. My wife and I went from She-Hulk to Reservation Dogs and got like whiplash.
Reservation Dogs is like an awesome native version of Atlanta, sort of.
It's pretty funny, yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, you can tell so much story in like 28 minutes with so much character, so much drama, so much comedy, so much style. And just comparing that to She-Hulk was just like, is so flat.
All the Marvel stuff is kind of bound by not being able to, the characters can't really change that much. You're bound by the strictures of an IP, you know what I mean? Whereas Reservation Dogs, all original characters.
Right, but I mean, Kane and Kung Fu can't change, and yet you can tell a gripping yarn in 30 minutes or something funny, Yeah. If it's nominally a comedy, tell jokes. The modern pace of comedy is just like joke, and there just aren't many jokes in She-Hulk.
The one episode where the drunk girl and Wong were like hanging out, and that storyline was kind of fun and entertaining at least, and then
Madison,
a bunch of us were like, well, that's kind of a problem when the side characters are much more entertaining than the main character of your show. But also then I was like, well, aren't they kind of punching down on drunk girls? I thought this was a female empowerment show.
I think she was a very specific kind of girl, and also she was she went through multiple dimensions and survived demonic ordeals.
Very little psychological damage.
I've been watching Power of the Ring, which I know nobody's gonna like, but I like it because I was not a fan that big. It took me a long time to come around to the Peter Jackson movies, and all the stuff that people don't like about Power of the Ring that I'm hearing voiced and everything is like, oh, it's so slow and it's deliberately paced and all this, and I don't care about these characters and everything. I was like, I kind of like all this stuff.
I just want to be clear. I love slow, deliberate, well-paced stuff. It's just you have the audience in the palm of your hand, and then they're along for the ride. But if you don't, then it's just a slog. Like I love Midnight Mass.
Midnight Mass was amazing. I freaking love Midnight Mass. A lot of people the same thing. Were like, oh, there's too much sitting around people talking, but their conversations were so interesting. It was like that was the appeal of it.
Once in a while, you'd get a little glimpse of menace, and I was hooked for every second of that show.
Much better than Power of the Ring, too, I'll say. But, well, you, Ryan, what are you doing?
Well, I finally watched Chapel Wait, which wasn't very good.
David Tennant was in that or something? Or?
Adrian Brody. But unlike Midnight Mass, which I didn't like particularly, because I knew that there was a vampire at episode 1, and I waited like 7 episodes for the vampire to fucking finally show up and start doing stuff. Chapel Wait, I didn't know anything about it. I was like, this is kind of dull, but I was just kind of watching it on the side. And then around episode 4, like, this kooky Nosferatu vampire shows up and starts being like, blah, I'm here to drink your blood or whatever. And I was like, that's fun. Overall, the show wasn't particularly great, but I did like those kooky Nosferatu vampires. I also didn't know that it was a Stephen King sort of based thing and Salem's Lot based and all that stuff.
Oh, I didn't know it was either.
Salem's Lot, which I revisited recently because...
The book or the miniseries?
The miniseries. I read the book a long time ago. I saw the movie a long time ago. And to this day, the vampires in Salem's Lot have a particular power over me and a particular pride of place in the hierarchy of just terrifying fucking vampires. And any horror author needs to confront the fact that, vampires are well-worn territory. And if you're going to approach them, how do you make them different? How do you make them scary? And for me, the Master from Salem's Lot is pretty close to the pinnacle of vampiric perfection. And I was thinking like movies and shows now that have vampires are very, very different from the vampires of Salem's Lot. And just trying to draw a circle around what that difference was, what that specificity is. How could you now in 2022 convey menace on screen the way they did in a TV movie? way back in the day. And I was kind of just reading up on Salem's Lot, and Barlow, the master, chooses this particular house because it is steeped in the evil history. And the main character of Salem's Lot had a horrifying experience with the supernatural before any vampires ever moved into that house. And I was like, what's all that about? And it's part of this sort of larger Stephen King universe where Salem's Lot, aka Jerusalem's Lot, was this town that was originally corrupted with this Lovecraftian evil from which vampires and other undead sprang forth. And Chapelwaite goes all the way back to the origins of that.
But not a Pennywise. They were kind of talking about it, and I was like, is it a Pennywise? But then I was like, nah, that doesn't make any sense, alas.
All right, thanks for listening. Go ahead, tell a spooky friend, rate and subscribe on iTunes, or follow and comment on Instagram and Twitter at webobpodcast and webobpod@gmail.com. You can find me at jeffccarter.com and pick up my collection, We Bleed Orange and Black, 31 fun-sized tales for Halloween on Amazon for 99 cents. And then, Ed, where can they find you?
I'm all over Facebook and Twitter and all that. Just look up my last name. I also have a blog, Delirium Tremens, at it's erdelac.wordpress.com. I should have a new collection out by the time you hear this called That at Which Dogs Howl. It's a Lovecraftian collection from Raven Canticle Press. So look for that.
Hell yeah.
Otherwise, tons of books.
I'll put links to all that in the show notes. And until next time, stay spooktacular.